on record.
If one erects a sukkah on top of a wagon or on a deck of a ship, it is valid, and one may enter it on the festival. On a treetop or on the back of a camel is valid, but one may not go up onto the festival day. If two were formed by a tree and one was man-made, and or else two were man-made and one formed by a tree, it is valid, but one may not go up onto it onto the festival day. If three were man-made and one by a tree, it's valid, and one may enter it on the festival day. This is the rule. Wherever it is, if a tree was removed, it will remain standing by itself. It's valid, and one may go up into it on the festival day. If one builds a sukkah between trees and the trees constitute its walls, it's valid. Persons occupied at performance of religious errand are exempt from the sukkah. Second, those attending them are exempted from sukkah, and one may casually eat or drink outside the sukkah. It happened that a cooked dish was brought to Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai to taste, and 2 dates in a jug of water to Rabbi Gamliel, and they said, "Bring them up to the sukkah." And when food less than a volume of an egg was given to Rabbi Tzaddik, he took it in a cloth and ate it outside the sukkah, and he did not recite the blessing afterwards. Okay.
Okay. Vav, Rabbi Eliezer Omer, Arba Isrei Sudos Chayv Adam Lechol B'Sukkah, Achas B'Yom V'Achas B'Layla. Says that you have during the course of Sukkot, you are obligated to have 2 meals a day in the Sukkah, which means total 14.
Right.
Chachamim Omrim Ein Ladava Kitzvah. No, there's absolutely no such requirement. The only requirement is Chutz Mi Leile Yom Tov Rishon Shel Chag Bilvad. The only time when you are obligated to have a Suda in the Sukkah is the first night of Sukkot. There you have to eat just like you on Pesach, you have to eat a kazayas of matzah. So on Sukkot, you have to eat a kazayas of bread in the Sukkah, and that's your chiyuv. And there's nothing about this 14 days thing. Odamar Rabbi Eliezer. Mi shelo achal leila yom tov rishon yashlim beleila yom tov achron. He says, okay, so if you forgot to have your meal on the first yom tov in the sukkah, then you should do it on Shmini Atzeres, yom tov achron. Then you should have another one on yom tov. On the final Yom Tov of Shmini Atzeres, and that will kind of be a tashlumin for the first one, even though we say that there's a possibility of Baal Tosif,
Right.
because once you've been in the sukkah for 7 days, now you have to eat your Shmini Atzeres meal in the outside the sukkah.
Right.
But Rabbi Eliezer says that for the tashlumin, you should nonetheless do it. Chachamim omrim ein ledava tashlumin. Nah, there's no such thing as tashlumin for missing out on a meal in the sukkah. Al ze ne'emar me'uvas lo yichal liskon v'chesron lo yuchal limanos. From Koheles, there's some things when they're broken you cannot fix them. And don't try. It's not gonna work.
Kohelet.
Yeah, so
Kohelet.
just it's too late. Okay, Zayin, Misha haya rosha v'ruba b'sukkah. Mishulchano b'sukkah b'ais. Okay, so here's your situation: is the guy's on his mirpeset, but he's got, let's say, he doesn't have that much space. So he, as the balabais, and this is a very common thing with the mirpeset sukkah in Israel, when you've got all these buildings with mirpesot all over. A lot of them leave, basically, 2 square meters or whatever for the sukkah, and the rest is underneath the roof. So everyone else is sitting outside nicely in the mirpeset, but nobody's actually in the sukkah. So what they do is they put all the men on the one side and the women on the other side, so that the men can sit over there. But this is exactly our case over here. His shulchan is b'sukkah bais. He's sitting right on the edge of the table, and his head and his body are sitting under the schach, but his food is on the table in front of him. Okay, Beis Shammai say he's being nimshach after the table. He's not effectively in the sukkah. Beis Hillel machshirin. This is fine. Amru lahen Beis Hillel Beis Shammai. But it says Beis Hillel, but we have a proof of this. Lo kach haya maseh shehalchu ziknei Beis Shammai v'ziknei Beis Hillel levakeres Rabbi Yochanan ben Achorani. So all of the zikanim of both houses went to visit this particular gadol. He was sitting in exactly this configuration, and nobody made a comment about it. That means even that the Beis Shammai didn't have a problem with it. Amru lahen Beis Shammai, Misham Raya, excuse me. That's your proof? אף הם אמרו לו, אם כן היית נוהג לא קיימת מצוות סוכה מימיך. Adarabba, our Masorah of this Master Shahaya is that they did protest and they did tell him that he was doing wrong. So we're back to square one, and it's a machlokes Beis Hillel Beis Shammai, and of course the halacha is like Beis Hillel.
I know I've told you this before, but there was a person in Far Rockaway that had a little mirpes. I mean, it was like nothing. It was like his wife sat inside and he sat outside on this little tiny thing, and she would, she'd pass the food to him, and kind of that's how he ate.
Yeah,
I see it all the time,
yeah,
every
we're
year.
very spoiled. We're very spoiled in Israel nowadays that everything is made like
Yeah.
this.
Of course, a lot of people I know, Pep, have apartments with very small pergolas, where there's not even enough room for two people, so to speak. It's very,
Hmm.
very difficult. I think I still a lot of people in the apartments. So, okay.
Okay, Mishnah Ches, Nashim va'avadim v'ketanim peturim min asukah. Now, this we knew already from many other Mishnayos that women and slaves are only chayiv in mitzvahs asay shea azman grama. They're patur from mitzvahs asay shea azman grama, and obviously the sukkah is a mitzvahs asay shea azman grama. So why does this Mishnah need to tell us? And the reason of this is probably because we just made this connection a couple of Mishnayos ago about the fact that when you have a Suda, that there's a mitzvah to have a Suda in the Sukkah on the first night, just like there's on Pesach. And on Pesach, we said Afhem Hayuba also on Nes, that the women have to eat matzah, the same obligation, same level of obligation as the men. So maybe you might think that for Sukkah, women have the same level of obligation as men to eat a kazayis in the Sukkah. Kamash Malan, Mishnah comes and tells us that no, this follows the regular rules that mitzvahs aseh shazman grama, women and slaves are parted from, and children as well, because they're not bar mitzvah. Katan she'eino tzarich li'imo chai b'sukkah. However, once the katan is no longer attached to his mother, and what's the criterion for understanding what is that line where he no longer needs his mother? The Gemara explains, "Kol sheneo mishnasov ve'eno koreh ima ima." When he wakes up, he doesn't go, "Mommy." Right? That's
That's
amazing how every child is like that. They wake up and they say, "Mommy." When they stop doing that, then they chayav in sukkah. But there was a Maaseh Shahaya, the Yalda Kalasa Shel Shammai Zaken. So Shammai's daughter-in-law had a baby, a boy, and this little baby was sitting in a crib, clearly not chayav in mitzvahs, but nonetheless, but Shammai himself wanted this baby to be sleeping in a sukkah, even from the age of an infant. So he took down the roof above the baby's crib and put schach on top of it so that the baby could sleep in a sukkah. Okay. Back to Yoma. Chespeis.
one who eats the volume of a large date, like it and its pit, and who drinks the volume of both his full cheeks is liable for punishment. All foods combine for the volume of a date, and all drinks combine for the volume of his cheekfuls, but food and drink do not combine. If one ate and drank in a single period of forgetfulness, he is liable for only one sin offering. If one ate and did work on Yom Kippur, he is liable for two sin offerings. If one ate foods that are not fit for consumption or drank liquids unfit for drinking, for example, he drank brine and salted fish fats, he is not liable for a sin offering. We do not afflict the children on Yom Kippur, but we train them prior to the previous year or prior to 2 years so that they should be accustomed to commandments.
Okay.
I
Shkalim.
saw your daughter's car outside. It was written a little bit and little like the Mr. and Mrs. Bear, was written on the window outside.
Yeah, that's right. That's that's
Who's
my
buying
son.
it? I said your daughter. I meant your son, right? Okay, we have Gimel Daled. After he had made the first truma with withdrawal, he recovered the remaining money with leather covers. After the second withdrawal, he covered the remaining money with leather covers. And after the third withdrawal, he did not cover the remaining money. The money is covered lest he forget and withdraw from accumulation from which funds had already been withdrawn. He withdrew the first truma on behalf of the inhabitants of Eretz Israel, and the second on behalf of the inhabitants of the surrounding city surrounding it, and the third on behalf of the inhabitants of Babylon, Judea, and the distant countries. what did they do with the truma? With it, they would purchase daily offerings, additional offerings, and then this nisachim, the omer, the 2 loaves, and the pot of bread, and all the public offerings. Those who watch over the aftergrowth of the Shemitah year receive their wages from the funds withdrawn from the treasury chamber. Rabbi Yossi says also, when wishing to may volunteer as an unsalaried watchman, they replied to him, "You too admit that they must come from the public assets." Okay, I think that's
One
it.
more.
The red cow, the he-goat, which is sent to Azazel on the strip of red wool, are purchased with funds withdrawn from the treasury chamber. The ram for the transport of the red cow, the ram for the transport of the he-goat, which he sent to Azazel, and the strip of wool which is tied between its horns, the water canal, the walls of the city, and its towers, and all the needs of the city are funded from the remainder of the treasury chamber. Right. And Shabbos. Okay, Yud Aleph. Yud Aleph Vav. Though one who threw something and reminded himself that he had left his hand, or another person caught it, or a dog caught it, or it was burnt in flight, he was exempt. If one threw a stone with the intention of inflicting a wound upon either a man or a beast, that he reminded himself, but then the wound had not yet been inflicted, he's exempt. This is the rule. All who are liable for sin offerings are not liable unless the beginning and the end of their actions are both inadvertent. If the beginnings were inadvertent and their end was intentional, or if the beginning was intentional and then there was and their end was inadvertent, they're exempt unless the beginning or the end are inadvertent. One who builds, how much must he build to be liable? One who builds any amount, one who chisels a stone, strikes a hammer with a drill, or any amount is liable. This is the rule. Anyone who works in his work indoors on the Shabbos is liable. Reb Shimon ben Gamliel says also one who strikes with a sledgehammer on the anvil while working is liable, since he is said as one who improves the work. Okay.
And base.
And one who plows any amount, one who weeds or prunes dry branches or prunes young shoots in any amount is liable. One who gathers wood, if his intent is to effect an improvement, he is liable for any amount in fence with kindling. If his intent is for kindling, he is liable for the amount of wood required to cook an easily cooked egg. One who gathers grasses, if his intent to effect an improvement, he is liable for any amount. If his intent is for animal fodder, he is liable as much as a kid's mouthful.
Rochas.
Okay, Gimel Aleph. One who's dead lies before him is exempt from reading the Shema and from tefillah and from tefillin. The pallbearers and the replacements of the replacements, those going before the coffin and those coming after the coffin, those who are needed for the coffin are exempt, and those who are not needed for the bier are obliged. Though these and those are exempt from tefillah. A bridegroom may recite the Shema on the first night if he wishes to. Gamliel said, not everyone who wishes to.
I think you just went backwards.
I did go backwards. Okay, which is not unusual. Okay. If they buried the dead and returned, and if they are able to begin and finish before they reach the line, they should begin. And if not, they shall not begin. Those standing in the line, the innermost are exempt, while the outer is obliged. Women, slaves, and minors are exempt from reading the Shabbat and tefillin, but are subject to the obligation of tefillah and mezuzah and to recite grace at the meals.
There we go. We have it on the same day as we learned it about Sukkah.
Right. Okay. Come in. Okay, come in. Okay, Beis Aleph. His fellows saw him descend, and they came running, and hastily sanctified their hands and their feet for the word of the labor. They took the shovels and the forks and ascended to the top of the altar. The limbs and the fats that were not consumed during the night, the Kohanim removed them onto the sides of the altar. If the sides did not hold the sacrificial parts, they arranged them opposite the ledge on the ramp. They began pulling up the ashes on top of the mound. The mound was in the center of the altar. At times, there was something like 300 core of ashes on it. And at festivals, they would not remove the ashes. On the festival, they would not remove the ashes from the altar because it was an adornment for the altar. And in its days, the Kohen would never lax in taking out the ashes. They began bringing up logs to arrange the fire on the pyre, but all the wood is valid for the pyre. Yes, all the woods are valid for the pyre, except for that of an olive tree and a vine. However, with these woods, they were accustomed with branches of a fig tree and a nut tree and an oil tree.
Okay.
So Kohen,
So that's
right.
it.
That's it. That's it.
And
Right.
Bab Matzia.
Okay. Bookmark. Baba Metzia. No. Okay. Gimel Dalet. If two deposited with one amana and one 200 zuz, and this one says the 200 mine, that one says the 200 of mine, he gives this one as a mana and that one a mana, and the remainder should be put away with Eliyahu when Eliyahu comes. Rabbi Yossi says, if so, what does the deceiver lose? Rather, everything should be put away until Eliyahu comes. And so it is with two utensils, one worth a mana and one worth 1,000 zuz. If this one says the more expensive one is mine, and that one says the more expensive one is mine, he gives the smaller one to the one of them, and for the larger one, he gives the value of the smaller one to the other. And the remainder she put away until Elijah comes. Said Rabbi Yossi, if so, what does a deceiver lose? Rather, everything should be put away until Eliyahu comes. If one deposits produce with another, even if it becomes ruined, he may not touch it. Now, Shimon Gamliel says he should sell it in the presence of a court because he is as one who returns a lost item to the owner. If
Okay.
one, okay, okay.
Yeah.
Where are you going on?